Hello everyone, it's Allison Frazier, and I am so excited to finally introduce my summer camp collection with Spellbinders. This collection celebrates my love for summer camp. I spent 6 summers when I was younger going to summer camp in the beautiful North Woods of Wisconsin, and it translated as I got older into my love of nature and exploring national parks and going camping with my own family. And if you're familiar with me at all, you already know that I love cute critters. I love cute things. I love all things Spellbinders. So to be able to combine all of this into this collection is just a dream. The collection includes 5 die sets, a layering stencil set, and a set of sentiment stamps. We will be taking a look at each of these in this video. So let's take a look at the first set of campers. This is the Trailside Trio. There are 17 dies to make a skunk, a fox, and a raccoon. This is the Woodland Trio. There are 17 dies to make a hedgehog, a deer, and a squirrel. Here we have the first set of accessories called Splash Days. There are 13 dies in this set. The name of this set has special meaning, and I'll talk more about that later. And here is the Camp Days set. This set includes some traditional camping items, but it also includes activities and sports that one would play at summer camp. So this is just jam-packed with a lot of fun stuff. All right, the next set is Trail's End. I named this set after one of the cabins at my camp. There are 19 dies, and they make a directional signpost with 8 different sign options, 3 trees, and a hammock. So this is a really fun set to help set the scene. This is Lakeside Memories, which is a set of 4 layering stencils. This scene is very reminiscent of the lake and beachfront at my camp. And finally, we have Summertime Sentiments. There are 22 stamps, and I'll share more of this set later in the video. All right, so let's get into it. This is the Trailside Trio, and these craft stacks trays come in handy. I have all the pieces cut out to make the 3 critters. The fun thing about this set is that each animal starts out with the same dies. They use the same body, the belly, well, there are 2 kinds of bellies in this set, the arms, and the tail. So they all share these things in common. From there, things get a little different. So they each have their own tail detail. And this is when you can really start identifying them. The same goes for the heads. Each animal starts out with the same dies. There is the head itself, and then there's a piece that goes behind the eyes. That's what you'll glue the eyes onto. I make this piece black for the skunk. And then the pieces that go on top are the ones that create the unique characteristics of each animal. And then, of course, each animal has its own set of ears. Aren't they adorable already? Now there's a die that cuts out all 3 noses at once, and then there's a die that cuts out all of the eyes. Now for the skunk, I have been making gray or white eyes, and that's why I use a black piece in back of the head. All right, now the arms are really important depending on what the animal will be doing on your card. So I usually leave those for last, especially if I'm going to add some clothes, which we will look at soon. Sometimes I'll flip sides if I want the arms to be raised. And isn't she adorable? All right, so here they are. Again, I usually hold off on attaching arms until I know what I'm doing with them. And that means I also usually hold off on attaching the tails. So here's a cute card that I made with the raccoon. And as you can see, one of his arms is raised a bit in order to hold the fishing rod. All right, let's take a look at the Woodland Trio. Again, I have all my pieces in one of my craft stacks trays. And just like the other set, these cuties share the same body and arms. It's a little different though, because the squirrel and the deer start with the same head, but the hedgehog has its own head. And then from there, you start using the different dyes to make each animal unique. In this set, the squirrel is the only one that has a tail, cute little bushy tail. And I wanted it to be on the left side because the tails on the animals in the other set are on the right side. The deer has hooves. They're just little pieces that cover the hands and the feet. And then there's a belly. I forgot the belly. The belly is the same for all three animals. And then, of course, the ears. They each have their own. We're going to pay special attention to the hedgehog in a bit because, well, she is special. But first, I forgot to show the cute little antlers for the deer. I usually put those on first, and then I add the ears. All right, for the hedgehog, here's the piece that makes the quills, and there are markings here to show where the head goes. So what I like to do is glue the ears directly to the quills. I tape the head in place temporarily using those markings, and then I can slip the ears in under the head. Before I glue anything else, I figure out what this little girl is going to be doing because the arms go in back of the body and the head goes on the very top. So you have to make decisions with her. She's a little high maintenance that way, but she is definitely worth it because look how cute she is. All right, so here's a card with the hedgehog and the deer, and they don't even need clothes to be adorable. By the way, I will have separate videos on my YouTube channel for some of these cards, including this one. And now it's time to move on to the accessories. Here is the Splash Days set, and the name of this set has special meaning. Every summer we had a special event called Splash Day where the whole camp was divided into teams and we would have races and other fun competitions in the lake. So I loved being able to name this set after that memory. We have a canoe, a little fish, a canoe paddle. There's a fishing pole, of course, for the fish. So there's two pieces here for the fishing pole. And this life vest is quite possibly my favorite accessory in the collection. It was one of the first things on my list of what I wanted, and Spellbinders did such a great job of executing it. At camp, we spent most of our days in the lake, so life vests were definitely a big part of our wardrobe. And here's cute little buckles to put on top. All right, we have a pair of swim trunks, and then of course the adorable swimsuit, which you'll soon see is quite versatile. There's little ruffles you can add on top and a little bow. Now let's see how easy it is to dress this little cutie. And then again, I leave the arms till last. So she can be holding the canoe paddle or the fishing pole. You can definitely have fun here and use patterned paper for the swimsuits. You know that I love patterned paper, so just have fun. Have fun with all of this. That's what it's all about. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that I usually don't attach the head if I know I'm putting clothes on. It's pretty easy to slip this bathing suit under the chin, and it's also easy to remove the head if you had already attached it and then decided later on that you wanted to add a shirt or whatever. But I just find it easiest to leave the head off, the head and the arms. And then add a little bow on top. All right, so here is a card that I made with this set. And again, I will have a separate video for this card. All right, so let's take a look at the next set of accessories called Camp Days. This is the biggest set in the collection. And again, I have cut all my pieces here. I'm going to kind of go in reverse so you can see what pieces match up with the dies, but we'll take a look at all of these separate components in a bit. This set combines items that you would expect in a camping set, like s'mores and a campfire, with activities and sports that you would expect to do if you went to summer camp. The idea of this collection is I really wanted to send these cute critters off to camp and have them be able to do some of the things that I did when I went. Well, I still go. I go to camp almost every summer. I'm lucky that my camp is still operating and I can do that. They do shut down the archery targets when alumni come at the end of the summer. I guess it's not a good idea to have unsupervised ladies shooting arrows every which way. I know my eyesight is not what it once was. But I do still water ski and canoe and hike and all that. Now we're going to start with the archery target. There are 2 pieces here and you cut them together. So here's the resulting piece. And then you add that on top of a solid circle. And then you can use that inner piece to cut out some colored cardstock. And from there, it's just a die cut inlay technique to create the target. Now, if you don't want to go through all that, you can definitely just lay that top detailed piece on top of a solid colored circle. So here's what it would look like if you did that, and that's obviously a lot easier. All right, for the campfire, there are 3 pieces to create it. And then there's a die to create the logs, and then smaller detail pieces to add to the ends. So there's what it looks like when it's all finished. There is a little flame that you add to the lantern. And then there are 2 pieces that you can add on top to give it some color. I think this is so cute. There's an ice cream cone, mainly because I'm an ice cream addict, so this was just a must-have for the collection. There is a stick and 2 marshmallows to make s'mores. There's a walking stick, and then there are pieces for the hiking boots. There's a piece that creates the sole of the boot and then the top of the boot. And here are the shorts and the shirt. And there's a little collar piece that you can add to the shirt, which I think is so cute. You can come up with lots of fun little color combinations here. There are little pockets that you can add to the sides of the shorts to turn them into cargo shorts. And here's the hat. There are 3 pieces for the hat, or 4 if you want to add the drawstring. The hat is something that you hold off on assembling until you put it on the critter, and I'll show you what I mean in a bit. Here's a cute little bow. And here are the pieces for the fun backpack. And I'll just show how these all go together. I love how you can make such a colorful backpack. You can use even more colors than just 3. And here's what it looks like when it's done. Here are the pieces for the tennis racket. There's a rim and then the little grip here. Now I'm making a racket with white strings, but I want the racket itself to be black, so I'm just using a black marker. And I know pickleball is very popular right now, but I grew up in a tennis family, and it was also a core sport at my camp. You could definitely adapt this into a pickleball racket if you wanted. Pickleball is actually very popular at my camp now, and it's what we play when I go back every summer. It's definitely a lot easier on the old knees, that's for sure. So here's the cute little raccoon, and you'll notice that I adapted that swimsuit into a tennis dress. I just lowered the ruffle to the very bottom, and now she's all ready for Wimbledon in her classic white dress. All right, let's go back to some of these clothes. I wanted to show you something that I've been doing. The teeny tiny circles that pop out of the eyes from the critter sets, those make the perfect size buttons to put on the shorts. And you can even put them on the little cargo pockets. Now we're going to dress the hedgehog here because remember, she is special. So I'm going to show you how she gets assembled. First I put the shorts on, then the shirt. And the shirt is a perfect example of why you want to attach the arms last, because they need to be lined up with the shirt. All right, now remember when I said that the quills have markings for where to put the head? Well, I'm once again taping the head in place temporarily so that I know where to glue the body. The body does get glued directly to the quills. And then once I have that in place, what I do is I add a few layers of scraps behind the head so that it will sit level above the shirt. So this little guy is now ready for archery class. And by the way, this was one of my son's favorite activities when he went to his camp. There's a stand to put the archery target on, and then there's the bow and an arrow. And then here is a card that I made with that little guy. So cute. All right, we're going to take a look at the hat now. And the first thing I want to mention is that if you're going to use the hat, then wait to attach the ears until after the hat is on. Here, I'm just carefully removing the ears because I had already attached them, but I can still reuse them. Now, if you want to use the drawstring, I normally flip the front of the hat over and glue that piece right there. But I'm just going to show you the hat without the string today. So first you attach the front of the hat onto the head. Then you glue the back of the hat behind the head. The very edges of the back and front pieces of the hat get glued together. And I do shade that back piece because it's, kind of the inside of the hat when you're looking at it. I attach the ears and back when I'm done. And then finally there is the band that goes on top. So here he is ready to go hiking. Maybe he's carrying his backpack. Maybe he needs a walking stick because he has bad knees like me. Or maybe he's gonna roast some marshmallows. So here's a card. You can see the hat with and without the drawstring. And you can also see the shorts as plain shorts or as cargo shorts. One of the pockets on the cargo shorts here looks a lot more dimensional than the other. I think it's just the perspective that this photo was taken, but I did add shading to those pockets, and I'm going to share that in a future video. All right, look at this. This is the locking compartment storage box. This came out a month or two ago from Spellbinders. I call this my critter closet. It holds a lot of my extra pieces here, like bathing suits, body parts, that sounded bad, shorts, eyes. Here's a bunch of backpacks that I've made. It's just great for holding. Now, I mentioned earlier that the swimsuit is very versatile, and I've been using it as a tank top a lot. And of course, you have to have ice cream if you're wearing a tank top. All right. Trails End. Here are the pieces. And again, this was named after a cabin at my camp. We're going to take a look at the directional signs first. I've already cut a solid piece for the back. And to make the words that go on top, you use these two pieces. And this is just like many other Spellbinders dies. What I like about this is that the letters fully pop out, so they're really easy to read. So then this piece just gets glued right on top of the solid piece. I have always loved directional signs, and it's probably because they've always reminded me of the ones at my camp. We would see those signs when we would go to different campsites for cookouts. And here's a new tradition of mine at camp, a hammock. We didn't have those back in my day, but we do now because they have those foldable portable hammocks, and I take them to camp every summer now. Now these trees are very reminiscent of some whimsical trees that were on the decor in my son's nursery, especially this little tree here. I always envisioned adding different shapes to this, like ovals or circles, but most people have those shapes in their stash, so we included these shapes here. But here are some circles I cut just to show you a different look that you can get, and you can even add it onto just a big circle. So here's just a fun whimsical card that I made with the tree trunk and just a bunch of circles. And here's just a sweet little scene that I made, and the sentiment is very important in today's world. I think we all need to take time away from our cell phones and technology and other life distractions and just find time to relax and rest our brain. All right, let's move on to the stencil set, Lakeside Memories. There are markings on the stencils to line up with an A2 panel. The first stencil creates the hill or the mountain, depending on what you want. The second stencil makes the tree line. The third stencil creates the water and the sky. And then the fourth stencil creates the sun and the beach. And I really wanted to keep this stencil set really easy. I didn't want to add too much detail or make it too finicky. So here's that first stencil. And for the second one, I just make sure I line it up with the bottom of the line of that first stencil. So there are the trees. And for this one, I just line up those mountains. This third stencil is the one you need to be a little bit more careful with in terms of not getting ink under the stencil. Whenever I have loose edges in a stencil, I like to blend away from them instead of towards them. That way, I know I won't get ink underneath. So here you can see with the clouds, if you're not careful with your ink blending, you might accidentally get some ink under there. I find that a bigger brush, like this Spellbinders brush, is much easier. Now this isn't hard. This isn't hard stenciling. It's just something you need to be aware of as opposed to just coming in and mindlessly inking. So here's what we have so far. And the last stencil creates the beach and the sun. And honestly, I just focus on lining up each of these at a time. So first, I'm going to do the sun. And here I'm coming in with a darker yellow just to add some shading. You really don't need to do anything extra with this stencil set, but this is really easy shading to do. So here's how that sun looks when you add shading. Now here I'm going to line things up with the edge of the water. I'm using a different color for the beach than I did for the sun, so that's why I just worry about one at a time. And I'm going to add some shading for the beach as well. This area at the top is where the beach meets the water, so the sand would naturally be darker from being wet. And here I'm just going to blend those two out. And here's what we have. Now, I like to come back in with my light blue ink and just knock the highlight in the water down a bit, just so it's not bright white. And here's a card with that stenciled background. You'll see that I did add more detailed shading. I will have that in a video soon. Now, I showed this card earlier in the video, but I just wanted to point out the little scene on the postcard. That is the stenciled scene, but you'll see that I made it look like mountains in the back instead of a grassy hill. So you can definitely get creative with this stencil. You can also just use parts of the stencil to create part of the scene. All right, this brings us to the sentiment stamps. Summertime sentiments. There are 22 stamps, and yes, I wanted to pack as many sentiments in here as possible. I picked a pretty classic font here, and I like all capital letters because I love cutting sentiment strips, and I find when they're all capital letters that they're easier to do. And the other thing that was important to me in this set was to have just general summertime sentiments. This collection is not just about summer camp, it's about summer. So, we have Hello Summer, Summer Vibes, Sunshine and Good Times, Hooray for Summer Days, just so many sentiments. And then I try to include sentiments that were specific for activities. So there's Have a Ball for tennis, there's Stay Sharp for archery, there's Your Real Catch for fishing. I just try to pack as much in there as possible. So there is the collection, and like I said, I will have more videos coming up with with some of these cards, as well as other cards that I have been making. I'm so excited to start sharing inspiration with you, and I really hope that you love the collection. I hope it brings a big smile to your face. I know it makes me smile, and again, just wanted to give a big thank you to Spellbinders for seeing the potential in this collection and for helping it come to life. Thank you so much for watching, and happy crafting, everybody.